What is your scariest true story? This happened while living at my parents' house about 16 years ago. My whole family, brother, sister, and parents were at a Major League Baseball game. It was a night game, and being baseball, it ran a little later into the night. I was working as a lifeguard in high school and would get off around 9 p.m. usually. The pool was super close to my parents' house, so I could get home within minutes. Well, I finally get home and get a shower and am trying to be quick about everything because there was a party that night that someone from work was throwing. I'm getting out of the shower and walk into my room and hear all this shuffling and running downstairs, so I yell, "Hello," thinking it's my parents. I then yell, "Mom, Dad," again to no avail, and hear the running of footsteps downstairs. The next thing I know, I hear our garage opening up. You could just manually lift the door at the time because our garage door opener was broken. Anyway, that kind of freaked me the hell out because literally no one was home except for me. I ran across the street and got my neighbor and her son, and we walked through my house with a samurai sword because I was afraid whoever was in there was still there. The neighbor ended up calling the police. When we did another walkthrough, we found that my dad had about $200 to $300 cash stolen. My mom's diamond rings and earrings were all stolen, and there was a set of earrings lying on the bedroom floor with the jewelry box lid askew. What happened was my parents' house was in the process of being robbed when I came home. I was in the house with the intruders for some time before they realized I was home, heard the shower running, and me starting to yell for my parents, which startled them and made them make a run for it. Hence the footsteps and shuffling I was hearing and the escape route through the broken garage door, which they must have scouted out for some time. The cops said that was the third break-in in our area within the past week, and they had been on the lookout for suspicious people without tipping off the public. Seriously, it was probably one of the scariest things that's happened to me, though. The moment I realized my parents weren't home and someone else was in the house with me was a terrible, gut-wrenching feeling. A few years ago, while I was sleeping, I heard my bedroom door close. As I was alone, my first sleepy thought was that the cat must have closed the door. Then, I took a look and noticed light coming from the other side. So, I sat on my bed, questioning if I had forgotten to turn the light off. Then I heard footsteps. My heart stopped for a moment. I got dressed and stood next to the door, listening to someone using my bathroom. I almost passed out at that time, so I sat on the bed and realized the phone was in the other room. Since it was about 3 a.m. and I only had access to a tablet, I posted a message on Facebook telling people to call the police because someone was in my home. I was then able to reach a friend on Steam chat and asked him the same thing. Right after, my bedroom door opened and the guy peeked his head in and asked me if Robert was there. I said no. The guy closed the door, then I heard the front door opening. I peeked outside and it was the cops. They took the guy in their car and left after telling me he was drunk and had entered the wrong apartment. My first thought was that I was going to get attacked or something. I had nightmares for a while after that, and now I have a security cam and also make sure the locks are on. When I was 4, I was at a mall with my mom. The department store we were in had a children's corner with toys and a TV so parents could leave their kids there while they shopped. On this day, they were showing a behind-the-scenes special of the highly anticipated The Lion King, which was going to be in theaters soon. Thinking I would see the actual film, I sat down to watch while my mom did her shopping. When it became clear they weren't going to show the movie and I was watching a glorified commercial, I lost interest and wandered away to look for my mom. But the store was huge and I didn't know where she would be, so I started calling out for her. Suddenly a lady approached me and asked if I was lost. I knew I wasn't supposed to talk to strangers, but she seemed genuine, so I told her yes. Then she offered to help and took my hand. I thought she was going to help me find my mom or at least take me to the front desk, but we headed back in the direction I'd just come from. Soon, we were nearing the door that led directly into the parking lot. I remember thinking this isn't right as it was clear she was taking me outside, but she still had me by the hand. Moments after she led me outside, I heard a scream and my mom sprinted toward us. She had already been outside looking for me and had seen me exit with this woman. My mom flew into a rage. "What the hell are you doing with my child? Where were you taking her?" I remember the lady panicked and didn't have a clear explanation, but I don't remember the exact details from that point. The next clear memory I have was driving home with my mom while she wept and told me to never trust strangers, not even if they are nice, not even if they have candy or presents, not even if they need help, not even if they say they will help me. It really stuck with me. Many years ago when I was in high school, I was staying up late playing video games. My parents were out but it was no big deal, being home alone didn't scare me. So I'm playing the game, and at around 3 a.m., my parents finally arrive. This in itself wasn't unusual, but based on their demeanor, something had happened. My dad told me that on their way back from their friend's house, a long drive away, he had noticed they were being followed. My mom had no idea, but my dad, being the driver, was aware of this car that had followed them from about halfway back. Our house was in the suburbs, and thus, getting to our house involved a few turns and whatnot. My dad purposely drove past our house without stopping, which is when my mom asked what he was doing. Sure enough, the car continuously followed my parents through the neighborhood. My dad ended up driving to the police station, which is when the car turned away and stopped following them. It's scary to think what could have been had my dad not had the presence of mind to be aware of his surroundings as a driver and to act on his intuition. My parents would have opened the garage door to put the car in, and the idea that a car whose occupants likely had malicious intent was right behind them is a thought that still bothers me to this day. Because of that past incident, I learned to always mind my surroundings when driving. When I was a little kid, I had a recurring nightmare almost weekly. I would be in the basement and would hear a meow. I would search for the source in the dark and find a sunken window at eye level with a little bit of filtered light. Lying in it would be a lifeless gray cat with empty eye sockets fixed on me, giving a mournful shriek. Sometimes a red light would glow in its eye, and everyone I loved would die. I would wake up at various stages of this nightmare. It got so bad one summer that I slept with the lights on all night. Every time I heard a cat, I was afraid it was the eyeless gray one from the nightmare. Fast forward 25 years later, and I'm buying my first home with my wife. It doesn't have central air, so we sleep downstairs in the basement for the summer. We have one of those sunken windows. One night the first week there, we woke up to the sound of a cat meowing and furiously trying to get into the bedroom through the sunken window. In the filtered light, I saw a gray cat, and I saw an empty eye socket staring back at me. We've slept upstairs since. But, in a twist, the cat is lovely. His name is Lou, and he runs beside me when I go for a jog. He also plays with our new Australian Shepherd puppy, the most social cat I've ever seen. When I was young, my parents and I went to see the fireworks show at the Vinoy Hotel in Florida. We were speaking to this really nice woman next to us. She was a foster mom for kids, adopted a lot of animals, and was super into charity. I was dancing with her and my mom called me over, saying the fireworks would start soon, and less than a second later the shot went off to start them. The woman grabbed her chest and said, "Ouch, something bit me," and when she pulled her hand away there was a perfect hole in her chest. She stood there a moment in shock before red started to appear, and then she fell to the ground. Everyone started panicking. I was separated from my parents and hid in the elevator. I kept going to random floors with people until I saw someone that my parents knew and stuck with them. The police came to our hotel room that night to get witness statements. We were on top of the hotel, and I never really looked into it after. I still can't do fireworks, but my dad told me it was a freak accident involving the gun they used to signal the fireworks. It was just the sight of her casually pulling her hand away, thinking it was a bee sting, and seeing this perfect hole. Then just, red. It was so surreal. My mom, my stepdad, my little sister, at that time she was about 12, and I used to live in a big house in a nice neighborhood. We loved that house, but we always knew something was wrong down in our cellar. The whole family hated being down there. It was big, like 4 rooms. We only had a laundry room down there and it was connected to our garage. My mom had saved some toys from when we were kids so our kids could play with them someday, but they were just lying there with some old clothes and hangers. The cellar wasn't renovated, so I don't know if that's the reason it was so intimidating, but there was something down there that didn't want any of us there. The earliest memories of scary/paranormal things were when my stepdad, who is very skeptical of the paranormal, once ran up the stairs, he never runs, and was scared to death. As he was doing laundry down there, he started to hear the hangers move from another room. A toy that my mother had saved started to play and had rewound itself. He was so scared that he didn't finish the laundry. My mother later told me that she repeatedly heard us yelling, "Mom, Mom," when she was down doing laundry, only to realize that she was home alone as we were at school. Later on we figured out it sounded like a little girl, maybe 3 to 5 years old. As we started to dig deeper, we found out that our stepdad's cousin drowned in a puddle as a kid. We thought maybe it was her trying to contact us. After a night out at a restaurant, we came home late. I went to the bathroom downstairs and found a little handprint on the mirror. It looked like a little kid who had been playing with their food had touched the mirror. It was not my sister's. We compared her hand with it. It seemed like a grown person had lifted the kid to reach the mirror, because it was placed over the basin, which made it impossible for a kid to reach. It really scared my family, as we hadn't had anyone over, and we should have seen it before leaving for the restaurant. I took a picture of the handprint next to my hand. I was so frightened. After a while, my sister started to see a dark shadow standing at her door at night, and she was so afraid and told us that it had bad intentions. She told us that it was a man standing there, looking at her. My mother was scared and brought some dry sage to make the ghosts go away because she thought they wanted to scare us. I think that helped. I don't remember. The last year we lived there before moving, we renovated our cellar into a brand new bathroom, working area, and living room. Everything looked so nice, but no one in my family was ever down there. We ended up selling the place, and since then nothing has happened. When I was younger, around 14 or 15 years old, my family used to camp at a state park. Every night my friend and I would walk through the woods. We called this the ritual. On this particular night, we decided to walk further into the woods than usual. We had flashlights, but we liked to try and navigate through the woods with them turned off. We were about half a mile from the nearest campsite when we heard soft whispering behind us. Obviously, we turned on our flashlights and spun around. Didn't see anything. So we kept walking and we heard it again. This time we stopped and looked around a bit before we decided to head back to our campsite. Then we saw who was whispering. It was a lady crawling on the ground whispering just random words. She was wearing dark clothes and was covered in dirt. When she saw that we noticed her, she stood up and declared that she was looking for her campsite. We ended up walking her back to the campground and tried helping her find her group. Turns out she was just super drunk/high and got lost trying to find a bathroom. Her friends didn't even notice she was missing, and if we didn't go that far into the woods, she would have been lost all night. It was pretty creepy. My freshman year of college, my best friend and I were going back to our dorm after a Halloween party. We got in the elevator and at the last minute, a guy stepped in. He was being creepy and glancing at us from the corner of his eye. Finally, he looked up at us right as the elevator stopped on our floor. His neck was wounded, and when he looked up, some red liquid poured onto the floor, but he seemed to be okay. We were freaked out but just thought it was a costume or a prank or something. About 20 minutes later we went down to get some food and saw the lobby swarming with cops. We never got the full story, but apparently he had followed people in and then got on the elevator with us. We don't know if he was running from someone or hiding from police, but apparently the wound was real. I still think about it. About 6 months ago, I kept having these weird episodes where I felt disconnected from reality. It's hard to explain, but I had the impression of sounds and feelings that I knew weren't coming from my actual surroundings. There were the feelings of heat and dryness, like the desert in summer, and the impression of, but not actual sounds of, shrill, off-tune calliope music. Yes, it was as creepy as it sounds. Not being able to trust your own senses can be terrifying. Then I just passed out at work one day. I'm an elementary school assistant principal, so unfortunately it was in front of a bunch of kids. I still feel bad about scaring them like that. EMTs came and I went to see a local neurologist who's a friend of the family. He talked me into going to the hospital with what he thought might be some sort of epilepsy. Scans quickly came back with a large mass in my right front temporal lobe, and I got rushed into Houston, we live just south of town, for emergency brain surgery. The good news is the surgery went great. They were able to get all the tumor out, the chemo and radiation have been very tolerable, and every scan I've had since the surgery has shown no signs of new tumor growth. My aunt told me about a creepy episode that happened to her some time ago. So, I'm from Italy, and she is too. She lives in an isolated house in the hills of Tuscany, which are amazing during the summer, but in winter, and especially on winter nights, trust me, they're scary as heck. So, it was a cold and dark night, and my aunt was home alone with her 3-year-old child, also known as my cousin, and that day my uncle had a night shift at work. It was about 11 p.m. when her doorbell rang. She went out on the balcony to see who was at the door, and she saw a young man. He was about 30. She told me that he didn't look that suspicious. The only thing she noticed was that he was really tall. She said he was about 2 meters tall. The man told her that he had an accident with his motorbike 1 or 2 kilometers away and asked her if he could come in. Now, my aunt is an amazing woman, but she's really gullible and naive, and she didn't even think about, for example, how that dude got to her house considering she was in the middle of nowhere. She was going to open the door for that guy, but while telling me this story, she said, "Something just told me that I didn't have to let the guy in." So she went out on the balcony again and told the dude that she would call the police and an ambulance for him. As soon as she said that, the guy ran away. She was terrified, and she locked herself in with the baby and called the police and my uncle. I still don't know what the guy would have done if she had let him in, and I'm glad I'll never know. I used to work as a farmhand/horse trainer's assistant. One day it was just me at the farm and it was kind of drizzling, so I decided to work horses on the lunge line. It's a long line and you exercise the horse in circles around you, for non-horse people, in the indoor arena. Well, I got through about 4 of the horses on the list for the day and took a particularly calm horse down to get him a light workout. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw someone walk by the human-sized door. I figured it was just a figment of my imagination and kept going. Well, I saw it again, but going the other direction this time. I kept going but kept an eye on the door. The next time I saw it, the horse I was working was going by the door and jumped sideways away from it and made a loud snorting noise. This horse doesn't spook it much. He'll walk by a trampoline with children jumping on it and being loud with zero issues. So now I was starting to panic because obviously, it wasn't my imagination if the horse was reacting too. So I stopped him and started walking him out so he could catch his breath and cool off before I put him back. I grabbed a dressage whip and called my boyfriend. By the time my boyfriend showed up, I had the horse cooled down, and we got him back in his stall and took a walk around the outside of the arena. There were footprints in the wet grass going all the way around the outside of the arena, and then they entered the woods behind it. Someone was skulking around and definitely didn't want to be seen. The worst part of it was that a lady in a nearby town had her life taken in her own barn with a fire poker about 3 months later. I don't think they are connected, and whoever it was never came back that I'm aware of. Just the fact that there was some potential sicko wandering around for who knows how long, doing who knows what, was terrifying in the moment and had me on edge for a long time after. I didn't like being there alone after that experience. When I was 15 or 16, my mom put me on diet pills. I still don't know what they were, that let me get away with just eating a tiny cup of soup the whole day and be okay with sleeping less than 3 hours daily. I got hooked on them because I could study way more. I guess the sleep deprivation finally caught up one night, and I started having auditory hallucinations. It started with white noise, then morphed into what sounded like a garbled shouting argument between a bunch of people and started echoing until it became a man with a deep, sinister laugh, laughing hysterically. The rational part of me figured it was an auditory hallucination, but holy crap, it was petrifying and I could feel every hair on my body standing up. Then another part of me just thought, well, if it's not a hallucination and I'm actually going to get killed by bloodthirsty ghosts, at least I don't have to take the test tomorrow. I continued studying. Asian schools were tough. In comparison to many of these, not very scary. A couple of days before my 22nd birthday, I was having a get-together with my family and boyfriend. My boyfriend had to leave for a school function and I was kind of pissed about it. It ended, and I got in bed because I had to work early. My boyfriend got back and was apologizing to me. I stopped him mid-apology and reminded him to go lock the door. He did. He got in bed and we fell asleep. A few hours later, I woke up to loud whispering in the hallway and banging on the back door. My parents were whispering really loudly to one another. My dad sprinted to the back and started yelling, "This isn't your house, get out of here." My boyfriend managed to sleep through this. I put my hand over his mouth so he wouldn't yell and shook him awake. I told him that someone was trying to break in but my dad was handling it. We lay in bed very tensely and waited. Sitting there and hoping I wouldn't hear the sound of someone shooting my father was the scariest moment of my life. In other news, turns out it was some drunk rich frat boy trying to break down the door. He said he thought it was his house. I still don't believe he was merely drunk with how hard he was trying to get in. This is my story. My first pregnancy was going well until the doctor looked concerned and had us go to weekly stress tests, this and that. Long story short, we delivered at 24-ish weeks and our son passed away when he was 20 days old. Once it was time for us to try again with the doctor's blessing, we got pregnant again. We kept it close to the vest just to make sure things were okay. My great-grandmother became ill and was hospitalized. She was awake when we first went, so we told her. It was clearly exciting news for her. By the next time we went, she was in a medically induced coma in the intensive care unit. One of my nieces went in to spend time with her, and she came out saying, "Grandma is going to have a new baby," over and over again. We hadn't told anyone else. Grandma wasn't responsive at all, but she clearly conveyed that message to my niece, who was 5 or 6 years old. At that moment I realized there's a lot that we don't see and that sometimes things that could be scary are instead good things. Our son came out okay and is now 17. His sister is 14. When I was 16 my grandparents hired me to house sit for 3 weeks at their farmhouse in a small town. It was the second to last night of my stay and all had gone well for a 16-year-old completely alone in a big empty house for 3 weeks. It was about 1 a.m. and it started to thunderstorm outside, so I decided to turn everything off and go to bed. I was upstairs in the front bedroom that overlooks their driveway, using the toilet when I heard a loud noise outside that sounded similar to a tractor or riding mower. Now this isn't completely unusual as my uncle lives down the street and he is the one who did the lawn care for their house. But at 1 a.m. during a storm, it was quite odd. I heard the side door to the house open and could hear my uncle's work boots enter below me. I thought maybe he was there to help out in case of a power outage. What really got to me though was the fact that the 3 German shepherds were laying at the foot of the bed, completely unaware, which is not like them at all. Those dogs go wild at a leaf falling to the ground 15 feet away. So I went to the window and looked out at the driveway. No cars, no tractor, nothing. No one was out there. All of a sudden, the stomping intensified and I started to hear what sounded as if someone was banging a broom on the ceiling below me. Now the dogs started going wild and I was in full panic mode. The thunderstorm outside was intensifying, the stomping and banging on the ceiling was getting louder, and the dogs were going berserk. Instantaneously, the power went out and everything stopped. The dogs, the stomping, the banging, everything. The room I was in was pitch black for about 5 full minutes and I hid under the covers trying to call my uncle in a sheer panic. After that, it was as if nothing had happened and the storm passed shortly after. It was the scariest and weirdest night ever. This happened about 19 years ago, when I was a sophomore in college, attending a small school in Suffolk County, New York. Within the first month or two of freshman year, I had found myself in a very tight-knit group of fellow theater geeks, 6 guys, myself included, and 1 girl. And they all loved horror movies and ghost stories. I had found my crew. Freshman year was tough, but we all held each other up and made the whole experience more enjoyable for one another. At the beginning of sophomore year, we decided that in October, as the Halloween season was ramping up, we would find a creepy wooded spot in a nearby town some night and scare the crap out of ourselves. And that's precisely what happened. We did some research and found that there was a particularly isolated area about 30 minutes away, infamous for paranormal sightings. Perfect. The 8 of us split into 2 different cars and headed out into the night. Allow me to set the scene. You turn off a busy main road, flooded with strip malls and restaurants and whatnot, and you are almost immediately greeted by complete darkness. Again, this area was very heavily wooded. It was essentially a large web of winding roads surrounded by trees, very few streetlights, and very few houses. Without a GPS or a good sense of direction, one could easily get lost in there. We all made sure to have fully charged phones and flashlights, just in case, but the goal was to keep driving until we collectively decided to pull over and go exploring. So per the directions, we made a left off of the main road, driving for 30 minutes or so into this dark network, picking directions at random, just getting intentionally lost. Our cars made a turn and, to our surprise, there was a huge log in front of us, turned on its side. We had reached a dead end of some kind, with nothing but trees beyond it. We all got out to see what exactly this was, stepped over the log, and noticed 2 narrow trails leading in different directions. This seemed like as good a time as any to grab our flashlights and do some amateur ghost hunting. We flipped a coin and set off on the trail to the right. The trail was so narrow that we had to walk single file to avoid getting whacked by branches. For whatever reason, I ended up in the back. I'm usually pretty rational and level-headed, but I have to say, the further we went in, the more I was overcome with an uneasy feeling. I kept hearing sounds deep in the woods, unable to shake the feeling we were being watched. But I seemed to be the only one who heard these things, so I shrugged it off as my imagination. And, in any case, the whole point of us being there was to be scared. Not to mention the fact that we were 8 able-bodied college students. What would we come across that could take us down? We headed down this trail for about 20 minutes, and just when I thought it would never end, we came to a massive clearing. And I mean massive. It was a large, open field of unkempt grass. comparable in scope to a golf course, but not nearly as well manicured. Trees surrounded the entire field, which was so large, we could not see the end of it from where we were standing. I was thrilled to get out of that narrow trail, but I don't think any of us were expecting to find an area so vast. One of us looked to the right and said, "Hey, check that out." We all turned and there was an old, dilapidated house several hundred yards away. The house was completely dark, with no cars or signs of anyone actually living there. We walked over and shined our flashlights at it, and sure enough, the windows and doors were all boarded up. I managed to peer between the boards on one of the windows and what I could see was an old white couch covered in plastic, but an otherwise empty room. Whoever used to live here, they were long gone. Because there was no way in, and because we all felt sufficiently creeped out by the house anyway, we decided to walk closer to the trail we had come in from, have a seat in the field, and figure out where to go next. We walked towards the narrow trail, but before we could sit, my friend Mark stopped what he was doing. His face dropped, and he pointed. We all turned and, on a very far side of the field, directly across from where we had come in, we could see something tall, lanky, and pale dancing among the trees. And by dancing, I mean it was skipping around, grabbing a tree, swinging around it, and then doing the same to another tree. Basically, a do-as-I-do. The moon was so bright and the woods so dark, it actually took a second for us to really understand what we were looking at. Jay, the 6 feet 4 inches skeptic of the group, wasn't seeing it. I leaned into him, pointed in that direction, and said, "Jay, look where I'm pointing. Don't you see that?" He squinted a bit, and the second that he saw it, he gasped with everything he had, clutched my arm, and whispered, "What the hell is that?" What happened next sent shockwaves through all of us. Whoever this was, they stopped dancing, looked in our direction, and started charging straight at us. Without even thinking, we freaked and ran back to the trail. Yet again, Jay was the only one who didn't see what was happening. He shouted after us, "Guys, what is it? Where are you going?" After about 15 seconds of running like hell, I heard Jay scream, "Holy crap." I looked back and saw his flashlight following the rest of us into the trail. While the walk into the woods took about 20 minutes, we made it back to our 2 cars, hopped in, and were peeling away in closer to 5. Once we were a safe distance away, we pulled over, got out, and checked in with each other about what just happened. My heart was pounding, and I know everyone else was feeling the same way. 19 years later, we are all still friends, living in different states yet keeping in touch through marriages, divorces, children, etc. But occasionally, out of the blue, one of us will send a group text to the others with something to the effect of, "The woods, that really happened, right?" It most certainly did. That experience is always in the back of my mind, and I'm pretty sure it always will be. Here's the thing that still resonates with me about that night. Whoever that was, they were dancing maniacally in the woods at 1 in the morning, and then ran directly for a group of young adults, not at all fazed by the fact that they were severely outnumbered. Did he know we were there from the second we parked? Was he the one making the sounds I heard when we walked the trail? Whatever the case may be, when he came for us that night, you can be sure none of us wanted to stick around and see what he was truly capable of. A few years ago, my friend and I went to the premiere of Venom. I got home around 10 p.m. and my girlfriend was already in bed. I laid down and heard a loud creak out in the hallway, at a volume that was much louder than the creaks the house normally made. This weirded me out as we live alone. I hopped out of bed and took a look out in the hallway. I turned on the light and saw nothing out of the ordinary. I quickly got back in bed and tried not to think about what the noise could have been. About 3 minutes after I laid down, I heard 3 soft knocks in quick succession from inside our closet. It really freaked me out and it made getting to sleep quite difficult. The following morning, as I was getting ready for work, I curiously peeked into the closet. Among the old clothes and shoes my girlfriend had in there, I saw a dusty old board game-sized box on a shelf. I blew about an inch of dust off of it only to find that it was a Ouija board from the 70s.